was,
Fun.
yeah, and we live, and I think this is episode 10 of Get It for 2021. And today I'm privileged to be with Doug Tedder, somebody who've got a world of respect for. We've worked together on the very same project, and it was absolutely awesome. His insights, and sometimes just asking the right question also. Um, just to take everything that you assumed you knew and turn it on its head. Um, so I'm really looking forward to the conversation, Doug. Um, and welcome.
Well, thank you, Johan. First of all, it was a great pleasure. You're working with you and the team on Verism. I had such a good time. I mean, we did some work. My goodness, we did a
Mm,
lot of work. But it was such a great time. And I always feel a bit in awe when I think about Verism. My small contributions compared to the learning that I was able to experience working with that team and
mm,
just looking and hearing about the various perspectives of folks like yourself and Suzanne and Claire and on it. I mean, if I try to name everybody, I'd leave somebody out,
yeah,
but it was just incredible. And I just
yeah,
learned so much from participating. And so my advice to anybody listening now, if you ever get a chance to do something like that, do it, because the
mm,
learning is just phenomenal compared. And I made a few contributions, and I was happy to do that, and I was happy that I was able to contribute, but the learning outweighed my contribution.
yeah. And I'm not saying yeah because I contributed. I'm saying yeah because that's exactly the way I feel about it. Um, every single initiative that I've been involved in terms of developing good or best practice or whatever has always been such a blessing, because you learn so much from people around you. And I must admit, I mean, the Verism team was pretty heavyweight team, so there were some really heavyweights in the mix there, and uh, and some of them became sort of heavyweights after that.
Yep.
And I think that's also a great thing is that sometimes, participating in something like that gives you the opportunity to be seen for how you can contribute.
Yep.
Um, and so first of all, don't underestimate that as an opportunity to learn and grow. And secondly, yeah, if you don't put yourself out there, it's never going to happen. Yeah. These things don't happen because somebody invites you. These things happen because you put up your hand, and you're willing to contribute.
Yes.
I teach at university, and one of my students, say to me, "So why are there so few, South Africans involved in many of these initiatives?" And I said to him, "Because they don't put up their hands, and." You put up your hand, you make a small contribution, and maybe 3 or 4 iterations later, somebody will invite you. But the first time you have to put up your hand.
Yeah. Yeah. It reminds me, I haven't told this story in a while, but when I was first invited to participate in the ITSMF, this is 15 years ago. And I got involved with the local uh, ITSMF group here in the region, the Ohio Valley region, and I just was became fascinated with service management. So we could have that discussion some other day. Why service management? But I became fascinated with it, and I wanted to get involved. And I approached Jay Stewart. You may know Jay,
Mhm.
and and I just said, how can I get involved? And he, here you go. Here's something to do. I've never done this before. Don't worry about it. Just get involved, participate, and you'll get there. And, it was a few years later, then I had an opportunity to get involved with the USA chapter at the national level. And I recall some social media post at the time, and I won't name names, but, it's like, who the hell is Doug Tedder? And here I am. And boom, I believe in service management. I believe this is the good thing for organizations to do. And I'm here to contribute. And, if I've been able to do that in some small way, then that's great. They'll look to your point, Johan, just raising your hand, and you get 10 times back the learning than your contribution has been my experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And you get to have a lot of fun doing it also.
Believe it or not, I look back and believe it or not, I do look back on those days and I was like, that was a lot of work, but at the same time, it was a lot of fun. And I have to admit that I missed it at times when the time passed and I was no longer active on the national board. There was times that I missed it, and it was just like, wow, I gotta find something to do. So thank God Claire Agater came along and said, hey, would you like to help me with my little project called Verism? Well, at that time, she didn't know it was Verism, and I secretly called it the Claire Project. And
yeah. So you say we can have that conversation another time, but I mean it's a question. Why service management?
Well, throughout my career, and I've been in IT quite a while now. It's hard to imagine that I've been in IT nearly 40 years. It's been the only thing I've ever done. And I've held a variety of roles. There was a role that you don't hear about very often called computer operator. And that was my very first job in IT. I was the overnight. Yeah. Okay. There's a group of us that job. Right. And I tease folks when I teach foundation classes and things, if you go to some of the museums of science and technology and you see the guy in the white coat, well, that was me, being a little facetious there, of course. But, I've done about everything in IT. I've been involved at every level, local, regional, global kinds of roles, operational roles, development roles, managerial roles, just on and on and on. And when I first was introduced to service management, it just like, and this is how I look at it. It's like I finally grew up, knew what I wanted to do. And it was like, wow, all of these things kind of came together for me. And I feel like that I had a unique perspective on how things needed to work from an IT perspective to deliver the outcomes that organizations needed from IT. And that, quite frankly, that has influenced my thinking ever since. And it's influenced my thinking around enterprise service management, which I know we're going to talk about today. I mean, that is what's driven me, is that it's all of these pieces that have to work together to deliver the outcome that an organization is expecting. And that just that's been the foundation. That's what got me excited about it. So there it is. There's my answer. Gosh, I haven't been asked that question in a long time, Johan. So there you go.
Yeah, and I think for me it was the same. Yeah, being in IT, I was Nubertech for quite some time. But I always enjoyed the social sciences, the people side of things. And then I was fortunate enough to be given a business role, and for me, service management was taking those three things and putting it together. Yeah, it's about business, it's about people, and internal stakeholders, but also customers. And then there is some tech involved. It's been a long time that I would call myself a tech, but there you go. So ditto.
I know enough. I know enough to be dangerous, I think. And the thing that has always benefited, the thing that I've always gotten benefit out of that when I've had these kind of conversations, regardless of whether it's been, and I don't like using this vernacular, but for illustration purposes, when I'm talking to folks in the business and I'm talking to folks in technology, my personal rant, we always were in the business. We just never acted like it sometimes, us technology folks. And I was able to have this ability to translate the two worlds and be able to understand what folks from outside of IT were telling me and translate it into technology terms and vice versa. And it is a lost art. I continue to, I continue to run into that over today it is, and I even said this last week. I've been saying this for a while, but I had a foundation class I was leading last week, and I said, technology just happens to make it run. And I don't want to minimize the importance of technology, but that's the least of the problem. It's really understanding what the outcome your organization is trying to achieve and how to do that in a way that is recognizable by the organization, right? That they feel it. That could start me off on some tangent as well, but that's the thing to your, it is about people. Absolutely. First and foremost, they have to understand their contribution. They have to feel valued. They have to feel engaged. The organization, then, those people form an organization. We all have a part to play. And I always remind folks, clients, students, whatever, if it only took one person to do do the things that our organization needed of us, then what are the rest of us doing here? And I think oftentimes we lose sight of that. And then, oh, by the way, when you get those things figured out, you need a little bit of technology to glue it together. You absolutely do. But at that point, it's easy. It's configuration and turn it on. And that, and if organizations would just keep that focus, if that's the way that they would look at it, okay, I don't want to minimize, there are some challenges with technology. Yes. But isn't it so much easier to go somewhere that you've never been when you have kind of an idea about where you're going, right? And that's too many times IT people, to borrow from Deming, they don't do plan, do, check, act. They just do, and they just do, and it's a lot of hard work for oftentimes little reward. Service management, right? We bring it right back to service management, and I see such a, this is what gets me excited about enterprise service management, which, okay, that's what we're calling it today. I think sometime we will drop the enterprise out of that, but there's an opportunity here to recognize the ecosystem of things.
Yeah, and in relation to what you've just said, I think there's two just quick things that I want to throw out there. Yes, we come from IT service management, and yes, there's a lot of best practices out there, but those best practices can be just as much as a curse as it can be a blessing, because that's when people start doing shit that doesn't matter. Yeah,
oh my gosh, yes.
Excuse my French. Yeah. But what I love about this idea of actually, thinking about the organization, and the organization as a context, applying all of this good stuff that we know that we need to do, which we now call, I suppose, enterprise service management, it's maybe not that well defined. There's a lot of things that we know. And yeah, there's some of the stuff in Verisum, and even in ITIL 4, there's some of the stuff, but we can actually think about these things and experiment and apply and make the organization a better place.
Yeah, I agree. And I, one of the, I'll throw out this comment, to your point, there's a lot that we can bring to the table. We as IT, and especially we as IT service managers, there is a lot that we can bring to this conversation. The one thing that we shouldn't bring to the conversation is what we've done with ITSM. And what I mean by that is there are a few companies that have done it well, but most organizations take a very narrow view of ITSM, and the thing that kind of gets the thing that kind of gets me a little worked up about the whole thing is that you read a lot and you hear a lot, social media and marketing and this kind of thing, where it's just as simple. Enterprise service management is just as simple as extending your ITSM practices into the organization. Oh God, no, we didn't do it. Most organizations didn't do it well to begin with. They didn't do the ITSM. They did IT operation management at best. At worst, they decided to do 8 processes, and my processes are better than your processes, right?
I lost you there for a moment. Golly me. Doug, if you hear me, keep on talking.
Organization would be the wrong thing to do.
Yeah, I just lost you there for a moment. I'm so glad you were still talking, and it wasn't an awkward silence.
Excuse me.
Yeah. So, how would you describe enterprise service management?
So I describe service management as an organizational capability for taking a holistic approach to delivering products and services that enable value. And when I say organizational resource and leveraging all the resources of the organization, including technology, not just technology, we have to leverage our organizational competencies. We have to leverage our culture, which is kind of a difficult thing, but it is. It's what makes it's part of organizations unique and differentiated. We have to leverage the things that we do well within an organization. I mean, not every organization, and I use this analogy all the time when I'm teaching, is not every organization changes oil in a vehicle. Doesn't mean that we don't know how to do it, but it's not a thing that we want to do. And back to our earlier conversation, we have to stop and think about what is it our organization is trying to do, and how can we leverage the things that we do well, and deliver value in the form of products and services. It's not just a technology thing. Technology can make it go, but gosh, our friend Paul Wilkinson, right? A fool with the tool is still a fool, right? And he's right. If all we look at it is taking an IT service management implementation, which is usually not well formed, it at best is IT operations management in many cases, with some cumbersome other things that get in people's way, roll it out into the rest of the enterprise. Oh my gosh, who does it really?
Yeah.
Yeah. I get a little. Yeah, that's how I would describe enterprise service management. It's not just one organization or one department within the organization. So there's a familiar theme for anybody that's read the Verizon books. We say that very clearly over and over. It's not just a single part of the organization's domain. Everybody.
Yeah. I often tell people about my first service management role. I was in this new organization that was born out of an old organization, And I was the service manager, and I had a team of people. Their titles all related to ITIL processes. And I said to people, we did a bunch of stuff, and the organization operated in spite of us.
I said this. I think I was talking to Barclay and Ian a couple of months ago, and I said, we've inflicted. Why would we want to inflict what we've done with IT service management on the rest of the organization? And Barclay laughed about it. What, inflict? And I said, that's the right word, inflict. Why would we do? Because and often, the oxymoron about IT service management is oftentimes IT is working against the organization in many cases. And, that's not the right approach, but there's reasons why they're there, and I'll leave it there.
But Doug, a question. I mean, all of the stuff that you've just described, isn't that just good management?
If you look at it at the macro level, I think you're right. I think what has happened is that, the reality of where many organizations are is that, one, they don't share the same goals to begin with, right? And so there's a disjoint between the organization's purpose and vision and what's actually going on within the organization, because people get very focused on achieving their outcomes because that's what they're recognized, that's what they're measured against, that's how they're compensated. And so there's good management, but it's at the micro level. There's this macro layer that, we're all on the same page, but when you get down to actually what's happening, it's not happening because everybody is so tasked with doing their thing. And we lose sight of the big picture because we're so concerned about making a widget versus how do we invite a customer to come order the widget. We don't think about it at the macro level. We think about it at the individual levels. And so yeah, it is good management, but there's a disjoint, and there's lots of factors that go into that.
And that micro level is, people would immediately assume if you make that statement, they would say, yes, but then what about sales and marketing? But they're also operating at that micro level.
Yes, they are,
and not at the macro level.
Yep.
So can we then say enterprise service management is the glue that takes everything that the organization is supposed to be doing to make their customers happy? That's not a proper sentence, but I suppose you get my drift. Yeah. So it's this issue of the customer on the one side, and then all of the little bits and pieces that happens in the organization, and somehow, all those little bits and pieces together need to actually create value for our customer.
Yeah, indeed. I think that's a good way of thinking about it. And I would go one step further and borrow the lean concept of customer, right? Every organization has a set of customers that it wants to service that are outside of the four walls of the organization, but internally there are customers as well, right? So lean calls a customer the next in line as well. And the only way how service management, enterprise service management helps, and I like the term glue, is if we understand that flows through an organization, and we understand that I am a customer of the person or group or team that immediately preceded me in the value stream, and I have a customer next in line in the value stream, but we're ultimately all working toward the same customer at the end of the value stream, then that starts to think, you start to think a little bit differently, and hopefully we can overcome some of the barriers that helps us overcome some of the barriers that organizations inflict on themselves. Sales only focuses on sales. Well, okay, yeah, they still need to, but they also need to understand the impact on inventory management and customer service and technology and HR and all those kind of things. again, we're going to have those organizations doing their piece. But if everybody in the organization that contributes has at least an awareness of how they contribute and how others contribute as well, then we'll work better together, and then we'll understand. So I think that's the promise of enterprise service management.
Yeah, and I'm glad you actually threw lean into the pot, because for me, whenever we run into a tricky problem in an organization, going back to my lean books, most of the times I can find the solution there. Or I've actually stopped reading the books. It's now just Audible. So there's a ton of these books that I just keep on listening to, and every time I hear them, I learn some more stuff. So I quite like that.
Yeah. The beauty about solving a problem using lean is it's solving by subtraction most of the time, right? Lean tells you to get rid of the waste, right? And it's counterintuitive the way we think oftentimes. Well, to solve a problem, we've got to put more stuff around it. And the big eye opener for me when I got introduced to lean, I start to try to use it more and more, is solving a problem is usually by subtraction. You take things out of the what you get rid of those, and when you can lean a process to a point where, or you can lean something down to a point where, wow, these things start to flow, and that's the trigger. They start to flow. They don't have to be the most efficient. They don't have to be. They just start to flow. Work starts to flow, and the organization starts to realize benefit from that flow. Good, you've done a good thing, and lean is the solution a lot of times.
My wife is a bricks and mortar architect, and one of the things that they've learned in design in the first year is that simplicity is the ultimate of good taste.
Yes.
And I think that applies to organizations also. And what's interesting, apologies, about what you've just said is that so often something happens in our organization, and then we put an interim measure in place until we can do the right thing. And that becomes the new way of doing it, but that didn't make it simpler, it made it actually worse.
Yes.
And that's another cool thing about lean, is this absolute fascination or fixation with the issue that you don't pass defects down the line. You solve problems as they occur. So there's a ton that we can actually, I think that anybody can learn from lean practices, but for God's sake, please don't go and do a course and just have a day board and a week board and it's like a Kanban board and stand-ups is not agile. Incidentally, all of that stuff is also based on lean.
Yep. Yeah. I recall working in an organization. They were trying to adopt agile methods, and they had their daily stand-up and guests and Cliff Notes version of the story, and everybody was invited to that except the operations and the security team. Aren't they part of the solution? Right? And they had their Kanban basic. They had what should have been vertical on the horizontals, and they had what should have been horizontal on the verticals. And it was like, it was great theater. It looked fun, right? Everybody had a great time. But you would look in their Kanban and there was blocker, because you don't have the right people standing around the Kanban. That's why you're anyway, again, another challenge that I think enterprise service management done well would help resolve, right? It's just obvious from my perspective. If you don't have the right people in the room, you're not going to get the right solution. So you got to get the enterprise together. If you're going to try to solve an enterprise issue, then you've got to get the enterprise together. Okay, it's not feasible to get a 10,000 person organization into a single room. So we need something like service management so that folks can understand where they fit, how things glue together, what are the values that we're driving toward, what outcomes make a difference, how do my outputs deliver or enable those outcomes, and let's talk about things that make sense to the enterprise, right? Not the little things that, as you put it, just doesn't make sense, right? Just doesn't make sense. No one cares outside of your team. It's the bigger picture that we have to focus on, and how do we make that happen the most effective way and as possible.
Okay. That being said, you are you're employed as an enterprise service manager in a large corporate organization. Describe your first month in the job for me.
Wow.
That's a terrible question, I know, but if you've got the answer to that, it would help a lot of people. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. There's a couple things I'm going to say. Whatever you think you know about IT service management, kind of set that to the back of your brain for now. Okay. So that's the first thing. Set that to the back of your brain. I think the way to get started with enterprise service management is take a look and start talking with your colleagues within the organization about those. Well, okay. First, and maybe this goes without saying, but I'm going to say it because many organizations, I'm surprised by the number of people that don't recognize and understand their enterprise purpose statement or mission statement. They don't understand vision and goals. Okay, so first thing, and then start having conversations with colleagues around what that means to them. And okay, now Doug, gosh, I could be talking to everybody. Focus on 3 critical value streams within your organization. What are those critical value streams? And this is something that I've started to think about more recently. How do I get started? Where do I start? Well, I start with those 3 critical value streams. Why? Because they're critical. I'll get somebody's attention by looking and talking about those critical value streams. People can start to understand their contribution to those critical value streams. And we can start to experiment and understand how we can affect. Once I understand those critical value streams, now I'll use lean again. Greatest tool in the toolbox for this. Where's the waste? Where do we not get the outcomes? Where are we not? Where, who is involved? I think one of the things that organizations don't recognize, everybody, and don't mistake what I'm about to say, everybody who comes to work, works within an organization, they want to do a good job. Okay. Generally speaking, they want to do good work. They're trying, they're doing the best they know how. What they don't know is what everybody else in the organization is doing and why it impacts them, why it doesn't. Again, if I'm looking at those value streams, I get a good big picture view without getting too far down in the weeds. The first month is understanding those, those critical value streams and getting that mapped to some degree that that I can have those critical conversations. Now, those critical conversations? Now, what do we need to do to ensure that is working well throughout the organization? How do we remove the waste? How do we embed that? That's where I think service management comes in. Okay, how do we embed that? And then what are our lessons learned so we can apply to the next critical value stream? If we do this well, we get a lot of good attention. We get a lot of learning and we get a lot of benefit. We can apply that the next time over and over and over. Now I'm going to be agile. I'm just pulling all the tools out of the toolbox. I'm getting the right ones. But where I start is with those critical value streams. That's my first 30 days.
Okay, so let me just bounce something off you. So the 3 most critical value streams are those that if they don't work, the organization cannot fulfill their purpose. Is that correct?
Exactly. Yeah, and this is something, Johan, that I've become convinced that this is the right way to go. And this will inoculate us, and I'm purposely using that word, inoculate us against poor service management at the enterprise level. If all we do is replicate the poor ITSM practices that many organizations have done across the enterprise, okay, all we're doing is passing a ticket around, and we still don't understand that contribution. We just, right? That's all we're doing. Is there value in that? One could argue, maybe, right? But it doesn't get us to business outcome. It gets us to a ticket, right? Okay.
Which often is just busy work. Yeah.
Exactly.
For those listening who don't know what a value stream is, how would you, in simple terms, describe a value stream?
It's the movement of information and perhaps products within an organization from end to end, beginning with a customer demand and ending with of that demand with a customer, right? So that can apply to manufacturing, that can apply to knowledge work, that can apply in anybody within the organization can kind of recognize, oh, this demand triggers this work within the organization, and this is how the work flows through the organization back to fulfill that original demand. It's
okay, so
that.
So there's two critical things that you've highlighted here. Is a value stream is across the organization. It's not within a silo. It's actually how the organization works together to create value for customers.
Yes.
And our success criteria is flow. Yeah. It must happen in the simplest possible way that it can happen. This is one of the things from Lean. Lean says you must do just enough work. Yeah, and when people hear that, they say, but that can't be enough. Well, then it wasn't just enough. The problem is we think that complicated work is better work.
You're exactly right. And that's what many well-intentioned, okay, so I'm not here to bash people for what they've done with ITSM. What I'm saying is learn from this. Yeah. There was some great intentions that many organizations had in mind when they started their ITSM journey. Yeah. But rather than understand the real value of this is doing things as simply as possible and keep it as uncomplicated with just enough control. And we over-engineered processes. We over-engineered things, and we made people jump through hoops and well-intentioned, but missed the target. Yeah. And to your point, there's a couple of things here that the value stream, not only does it get, the value stream gets you, if you look at it from an enterprise level, not only does it help you understand flow, it also helps you understand the enterprise nature of work. When what I mean by that is it's all of us working together, some of us in parallel, some of us in sequence. And the weird thing, the interesting thing about value streams, guess what? They don't know what a silo is. They jump around the organization.
Absolutely.
Wow. Right. And that's in my mind, that is so eye-opening and empowering for an organization to understand that. I'm not minimizing any one person or department's contribution. I'm recognizing it and putting it where, oh, that's where we fit, and that's how I help, and that's how my department helps, and this is where. And the amazing thing is that very few people know that within an organization. In my experience, right? Yeah. Very few people, have that big picture view. I'm not saying don't do your little specialized activities within your department, because that's why you're there. What I am saying is understand how that fits into the bigger picture.
Yeah, you're supposed to do that well within the bigger picture. Do you know
Yes.
what I loved about the statement that you've just made, or the example that you've used is let's have the right amount of controls. So I reckon about 80% of controls in organizations are unnecessary, for two reasons. They copy and paste.
Yes.
Okay, so people don't understand why they're there. They are only there because we haven't solved the root causes of problems. So it's a plaster, which is really dangerous, because leaving a wound too long unattended will cause it to fester. Yeah. And number three is because people tell us we have to do this. It's the curse of best practice. Yeah. Yes, but ITIL says you must. ITIL doesn't say anything in terms of you must. They just say you could, and so do very some, and so do any of these other things.
Yes.
Yeah.
Must is not must is a 4-letter. Well, two things about must. Must is a 4-letter word, which is not good, right? And must never read in any of these frameworks. All these frameworks do is give you things to consider, and oh, by the way, here's some experience that the collective knowledge of the world has gathered over the last few years. Right. And please.
And the important thing is it's the collective knowledge and wisdom of a bunch of people. It doesn't mean everything applies to you.
Correct. Yeah, correct. And this is another small thing, rant, right? It is the more successful organizations, in my experience, apply that critical thinking and think about what it is that they want to accomplish, and then go look for the right tools. Right. And I always use this analogy, maybe this, right? If you hired someone to come remodel your house, and you just put out that request, hey, please come remodel my house, and they show up at your door without getting to that, okay, what do we want it to look like, what colors, what materials, what architecture style, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And they showed up to your house, first of all, without having that conversation. Wouldn't you scratch your head? It's like, wait a minute. Oh, I don't feel good about this. And then make it even worse. They only showed up with one tool in their toolbox. So everything looks like a nail because all I have is a hammer. But yet that's how many organizations have tried to do service management. They look at the books, they look at an ITIL or a COBIT or whatever. And here's their one tool in the toolbox, and they don't think about what their organization needs to accomplish. It says this in the book on page 17 that I need to do it this way. Boom, boom, boom. No, never did say that.
I'm going to use another analogy. Remember in the days when, we still used to get catalogs in the post. Yes. And you can order a bunch of stuff from it. I suppose it's like a website. Now, I see best practice books like that. Imagine if you get a catalog and you order everything. That's as stupid as it is to try and do everything in a best practice. So, Mohammed, you ask what is meant by poor ITSM practices. Are there any specific practices to point to? So the answer is no. It's just the things that's done poorly because you Control C, Control V. Do things because it matters. How do you know that it matters? You map the value stream. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And go one step further. Yes, you do map the value stream, and then ask the customer, were they happy with the result? Very simple question. Were you happy with the result? All these measures are good. Ultimately, the customer has to be happy with the result.
Yeah.
That's the last mile, if you will. I don't see us doing a good job typically asking the customer, are you happy with the result?
Do you know, that brings me to another thing. I can't remember who said it, but it's somebody who taught me about lean somewhere along the way. He said the best way to determine if something is valuable is to ask the customer, will you pay for it?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
If not,
Yeah.
it's a non-value add activity.
Yeah.
It may be necessary, so just bear in mind there are things that we do for ourselves. Yeah. So not everything. And if we don't do it, most probably the customer wouldn't be so happy to pay for other things. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
But the easiest way to get rid of waste is not to make our process better. It's to unburden the way that we do things. So that's, what is that? Muri, I think. Yes.
Yeah. The variability and the Mura and all the things. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's all of that BS that we keep on adding to the business in terms of, something went wrong and we're going to add another level of signing into the process. That's going to make no difference. Understand why it went wrong and go and solve that. Another signature higher up in the chain, further away from where the work is done, farther removed from the customer is just a bad idea. Yeah.
Yeah. No value at all. And yet that's what, again, what many well-intentioned IT service management implementations have done, and to inflict that, and I'll still use that word, inflict, across the organization, is just taking the wrong thing and exasperating the situation. I have a saying, or I call that enterprise silo management. We just continue to reinforce the boundaries. Those things that we've artificially put up around our various parts, and just look this kind of stuff. Well, we got to have that other person signing off. We got to have that. Why not make that? Why not define the criteria? Fix, to your point, fix the problem once. Criteria by which we're going to check for it, and let it flow. But adding more steps doesn't necessarily make it better. All right. It really doesn't.
In my experience, it hardly ever makes it better.
Yeah. Yeah.
So back to that statement from my wife's professor: simplicity is the ultimate of good taste.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And I think that would be a good lighthouse for folks starting their enterprise service management. Is consider that organizations by design are often very complex, and we're not here to try to fix that complexity. But what we are trying to do is do it in we are trying to provide a very simple way to deal with that complexity. The more that we can hide that complexity and simple across the organization, the more likely we're going to have success. And we've got to we have to think about, the second thing we have to think about is it's just not as simple as turning around your service desk tool and pointing it back at the organization, or saying, here's our incident management process. You don't have to call them incidents. You can call them, but this is the workflow for you. No. We're playing word games, and we're just adding complexity. And why not think about value streams and flow as the approach toward enterprise service management, and don't become overwhelmed. Start with those 3 critical value streams and learn from them. And by the way, your learning results in huge impact to the organization, and people within the organization start to recognize, this is what they mean by service management, not get a ticket, and something that a service desk does, which is what many organizations call service management.
Yeah. So we've agreed that enterprise service management is a good idea. It's necessary, and it will add value to organizations. Now, say somebody listens to this, and it's a CEO, a CXO, or whatever, and they say, "This is really a cool idea. I'm going to look for a enterprise service manager. Who and what should they look for?
Gosh, so several things come to mind. One, they find someone that can apply critical thinking. Two, find someone that is not curious and asks why a lot, right? But being friendly about it, right? Gotta be friendly about it, because if it's me, I can't do this by myself, right? So I've got to win friends, and really curious about why we do what we do, not challenging it yet, just why are we doing this? Just help me understand, right? And someone, the third skill I would add to this is that has a good background in systems thinking, understand systems. We're not going to blow up systems tomorrow. We're not going to take systems out of the mix tomorrow. But we've got to get started. And I think if you have those three attributes, those are three core attributes that would help or CXO get started on enterprise service management. Just those three attributes. And I think that notice I didn't say technology. No, I did not say technology. It's those. I think it's those three.
Yeah. So what I like about number 2 is it's just lean again. That's the description of a go-to Gimbal. Okay, let's make it easy. Go to Gimbal. Okay.
Yes.
Go see, ask why, show respect.
Yep. I apply Gimbal every time I get a chance. I was working with a manufacturing organization here locally, and they were having struggles with their service desk, and we did a Gimbal Walk. There were like 10 of us, and first of all, it attracted a lot of attention. Oh my gosh, here comes 10 people,
Yeah.
But it was so enlightening and powerful. Just to first of all, you're asking me questions. The service desk people, you're asking me, and you're writing, and you're asking me questions about why, and it's having a conversation. Suddenly the people that you are observing, the workflow that you're observing, they feel respect. Just interest, and just asking why. Help me understand. And that was my coaching to the group. Just every question that you ask, start with help me understand. Right. And it was so powerful to see not only the reaction from the folks on the service desk that, they're asking me why. They're not working at, they're asking me why, but to see what the team learned when we did the debrief. It is so powerful. And I think that same approach can be applied to enterprise service management. Is just go see and ask why, show respect. I mean, perfect. Right. And then apply those other two things, systems thinking and just that, just add it in that way, really helps get you on the right start, and stick with it, right? Stick with it. Don't apply technology too soon. Oh, this has got to fit within my name your vendor tool, right?
Yeah.
At some point, yes, you want to think about it, but not initially.
Yeah. Or just jump in and want to introduce a bunch of new processes.
Oh gosh, yeah, it's no.
So I'm going to go back to this question that we had. What are poor ITSM, and then therefore it will be ESM practices. It's copy and pasting stuff because somebody said it was a good idea.
Yep. Yeah. Number 2, we've spent a lot of money on our current ITSM tool, and we need to spread the cost out. So therefore, we're going to use the same ITSM tool.
Yeah, inflict the pain on other parts of the business.
Yes, because it looks awfully expensive, and IT's number is way high. Sorry, it's reality. We're trying to spread the total cost of ownership. Well, okay, so we've traded dollars and buckets over here for pain and suffering over there. Please no.
It sounds like purgatory, but I suppose that's what actually what some of us did to organizations. And unfortunately, I must include myself at the beginning of my career.
Me too.
It
Me
was
too.
it was well meant. Uh, it was unwittingly, but the results nonetheless were just as painful.
Yep. Yeah. I'm right there with you. I was all about control versus enablement early in my service management life. It was control versus enablement. It was well intentioned. There were good reasons why, or at least at the time, we thought there were good reasons why we needed to do what we're doing. And the reality just took something that was broken and far from repair it, made it actually more difficult to deal with. So, if you know, you know, if you can't learn from that history, and I'm learning from that history every day. I'm not perfect. I still make mistakes, and I want to make mistakes, but still recognizing that as the wrong way to have done it, and here's what I've learned from it, and if I can share that with others, that's what I hope to do here.
Just by the way, when Doug says he wants to make mistakes, it's not like me saying, I know it's wrong, I'll do it in spite of that.
True. Yeah. Yeah. I'll make a mistake not knowing that it's a mistake, right? But this moment, yeah, I guess as an independent consultant, I guess I could generate a lot of business for myself by doing that, but that's unethical, and I wouldn't do it that way anyway. So,
yeah. So here's a challenge maybe for anybody listening to this. If we say all of this is about the big picture and getting the big picture to work better, by essentially making it simpler, I want to put this challenge out there. If you're a manager, set yourself a goal. See if there's one thing every week that you can stop doing, or that you can get your team from stopping to do. Yeah. Because it doesn't matter.
yep. I think that's
There's
great
a ton of those
advice.
things out there.
I think that's great advice. I'm convinced that there are, if you start enterprise value streams, if you stop doing things you shouldn't be doing, that's also known as continual improvement or reduction of technical debt. I mean, whatever the buzzword of the day is, but it essentially stop doing things that don't make sense, that aren't adding value. And get to know your organization, really get to understand what it takes to deliver those products and services within an organization, the competencies that you got to have, the technologies, the people, the physical plant, the intellectual, on and on and on, right? In Verizon, we call that an organizational portfolio, and it doesn't have to be complex, but understand how those things work together and start making data-driven decisions. How powerful, right?
Yeah.
So,
and Doug is being modest because that part of the book he wrote, and it's one of the parts of the book that I use so many times in my consulting practice. So thanks for that, Doug. It was an awesome contribution. I knew that it had to be there, and I was looking at this thing, and I just didn't know what to do with it, and I put it out there, and you were the guy who put up your hand. Thank you.
Yeah, well, it was fun. It was just like, well, but I appreciate your kind words. That's very, very kind.
Okay, so here's just another quick question. The most challenge I face actually is that each party, the client and the consultant firm, like to maximize the benefits from ITSM project. The consultation firm like to do more to be paid more, and the client like to get more with paying less. How do you achieve the balance? So I'll leave that as your parting question.
Wow. There's oh my gosh, my friend Emily would just love me saying this. If you're doing valuable work, your organization will pay for value. You've got to can ask, okay, what is it that we're trying to achieve? What do you value? And then what is that worth to you? Right.
Yeah.
Value, there's a reason, we, even as individuals, we will pay for things that we find valuable, regardless of cost, because we see value. Yeah. And that's the way, in my opinion, that, and I don't want to sound flippant or cavalier about it here, but that's the answer. We really, as and I'm an independent consultant too, right? One of the things I try to do, why is this important to you? When people ask me to do or help them, why is it important to you? I'm trying to get to that value question. Yeah. And then, value has value, right? There's a number that goes with that value. At the end of the day, that's how the world economy has been built. So yeah, that's my answer.
So I would suspect that customers want to pay less because they don't see that much value in what is done. I would suspect that much of what is done is Control-C, Control-V. The customer can buy the book for cheaper. And then the last thing that I just want to leave, if you say that you are a consultant, be a consultant and not a contractor.
Bingo. Yep.
A consultant is somebody that listens to a customer's problem and give them advice and help them to solve the problem. A consultant is not there to copy and paste, to do the work for the customer. And what's even worse is if the customer tells them what work to do. So here's one of the things that I've learned very, very early in my career. Number one, I hate doing that stuff because I suffer from attention deficit. So repetitive stuff is really difficult for me to do. So I don't typically want to do the same thing over and over and over. So very early when I started Get It Right, what I was looking to do is how quickly can I walk away from an engagement? Instead of thinking about how long can I stay engaged. And the surprising thing happened. Customers that I did that with, which eventually became all of them, kept on coming back to me because the next time they had a problem, there was a level of trust that I won't try and entrench myself or my resources into their business. I value their problem and I value my contribution to the organization. And when they don't value it anymore, I know that my contribution is done.
Yep. Same philosophy. I want to help a client as long as I can provide help. When I no longer provide value, then let's shake hands and part, because I have achieved what you've asked me to do. And I if I want to embed myself, then I want to then become an employee and contribute in a different way. And as long as I'm a consultant, that's not my philosophy. I want folks to come back because they feel value in what I do, and I do exactly what you described. I listen and try to help them, and tell them what they need to hear, not necessarily what they want to hear, but tell them what they need to hear. And sometimes I do better with that than others, but that's really my philosophy around it as well.
It's much more fun.
It is, right? It is when you have a problem and that is kind of unique. All problems are unique, right? There is no best practice answer, right? And I think there's the mentality that organizations have kind of fallen victim to is they want to do a copy and paste. They want to do the what they feel like are no-brainers, and everybody has done this before. Why can't we just take what they did? Well, the problem is you're not them.
Yeah.
And you never you need to be you. And so what's unique about you? And then let's have that critical conversation, that critical thinking, and let's solve it. And we've got some resources to help give us some guidance. It's our solution, not someone else's. And organizations suffer from that because they're looking for that quick fix. The problem that many don't recognize is it took a long time for folks to be able to react quickly and responsively. I don't want to say the A word, because then that gets people off into a tangent, but they've built things in place to give them that ability to become responsive, because they've done that critical thinking, because they understand the value, because they understand the problem and the value of fixing the problem. It's not the adoption of this methodology or that framework, or it's not that. Those are just things that help. They're not the answer.
I'm going to say something that most probably would be to both of our detriments. Consultants can't fix your problems. They can only help you to fix the problem. And if you are not willing to invest in solving the problem, no amount of money spent outside of the organization will ever solve that problem.
Agreed.
We are guides. We are Sherpas. Yeah. If you want to climb Everest, get a Sherpa. No question about it. But, the Sherpa is not going to climb Everest for you.
I say something very similar. I cannot, as a consultant, I cannot make you do anything. I feel like my role as a consultant is to hold up a mirror to the organization and ask the client, do you see what I see? Here's what I see. Please take a look. Do you see what I see? Here's my advice. I can't make you do it. Can't make you like it. Your success depends upon your willingness to actually do what it takes to fix the issue. But I can't make you do anything as a consultant. Not my job, nor is it my intent. I want to help you solve the issue, help you achieve your goal, but I can't do it for you. Right? Not about.
Here's a quick funny story. TG Ono, apparently one of his managers, he took him to the factory and with a piece of chalk, and he drew a circle, and he said to the guy, he must stand there and observe. So I said, see. So half an hour later, he came back and says, what did you see? The guy described everything. He says, no, you haven't seen yet. See some more. So sometimes we have to do that to customers also.
Yes. Yeah. Keep looking. Keep looking. Yeah. Yeah. So it's just getting folks to take a look and be objective about that. And we're people, right? We have emotional involvement with it. We have pride and ownership. I have pride and ownership. I feel like there's times that I can do some good work, and I'm proud of that work. But I've also been around long enough to recognize that that work is only as good as my ability to learn from it and adapt to the next situation. And I always tell my clients, I guarantee, absolutely guarantee, I'm going to make mistakes with you, but you're also getting the benefit of the mistakes I've made before, and I just share them with you only because here's what I learned from it, and hopefully you'll benefit from it as well. Excuse me, as well. So.
Absolutely. Doug, the people say to me they find it difficult to listen longer than an hour. So we're on 1 hour and 8 minutes. So what we'll have to do is we'll have to do this again, if you're willing.
I am very happy. It's been I didn't realize we've been talking for an hour. I looked at the little timer up in the corner. It's like, wow, we have an hour, but it's been a real pleasure, and thank you so much for having me come on. It's been real. It's so happy to catch up with you, first of all, and just have a great conversation. It's
awesome,
it's not fake; it's real.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing your experiences and your wisdom. Yeah. And it's always nice to have a affirming voice also. When you talk about things, I sat here most of the time going like this, and it's not because I've got some nervous twitch. It was just so great to listen to you saying all of this stuff that I absolutely agree with. Thank you very much for making the time. Stay well, and hope to see you soon.
My pleasure, Johan, and same to you. It's been a real privilege. Take care of yourself. I hope we can cross paths soon.
Okay, I'm stopping the broadcast.